Morning, everybody. How you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. There's Bugsy Malone on Squirrel Patrol. We hope you're all happy and healthy doing the things you love. I've got a cold coming. You can feel it. Apologies for no video yesterday. But there wasn't much to talk about. Today, however, there's lots to talk about. So let's get straight into it. Before we do, please do me a favour, guys. Smash the like button for me, if you don't mind. It really helps the algorithm find new Tottenham fans who might be interested in this content. Hit the subscribe button as well if you haven't already. 50% of the regular viewers to this channel haven't hit the subscribe button. It's free to do, really helps out as well. Hit the notification bell and drop a comment. Let me know your thoughts on today's transfer news, views and clues update. And guys, we're going to start with a Juventus starlet, English under-21 international, Samuel Illing Jr. A left winger by trade, but can play off the right and through the middle. A left-footed left winger, which is unusual these days. Physically quite mature. He's tall, he's very fast, he's got very good acceleration. But despite me thinking he has bags of talent at running at players, I actually don't think that that is his strongest asset. I think from what I've seen, and again, small sample size, the player has only, I think, made 4 first-team appearances for Juve this season, got 1 assist, but has done quite a lot of interesting things at the kind of junior level. His ability to kind of find players with long cross balls as a left winger, who, on counter attacks can break the play up, is really advanced for someone of his age. His anticipation in and around the box is a super strength. When there's a melee going on and someone's had a pot shot and it's bit of a kind of pinball around players in there, or when the goalkeeper's parried it and it falls down, he's the first one to anticipate what's going to happen and uses his acceleration to get there early. So someone who's like a bit of a, I almost say a fox in the box kind of thing as well, which will be useful for Tottenham's sort of system if he was to come in and play off the left. That's to say, not to mention that despite it being a small sample size, I do think his ability to dribble and run at players is something that's already exciting and already sort of providing dividends, but it's something that will get better and better as time goes on. I think he's coming into the last year of his contract. According to Transfer Market, he's valued at £9 million. And more importantly, guys, I guess the reason why this story is being linked is A, the Juventus link. Tottenham have got good relationships with Juventus, but more importantly, he's also part of CAA Base, which is the agency where the vast majority of Tottenham's first team are represented. And so that's probably another link, similar to why Gleison Bremer is always linked with us. And lastly, of course, the guy's English, right? And I think that there's going to be considerations this January around making sure that the numbers are balanced. Now, I know he technically won't need to count as a foreign player, as a homegrown player, because he's 20. Until he's 21, that won't be an issue. But if it's true that Tottenham are looking to kind of move on the likes of possibly Ryan Sessegnon, possibly Ben Davies, possibly Ollie Skip, if Postecoglou has kind of run his eye over those players and thinks they're not really my type of players, they're not really what I want for the system, I need different, I need better, then he's going to need to be factoring in homegrown talent at some point in the next 2 windows as well, to make sure the numbers are all balanced in that regard. And so maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of rationale. An interesting winger. Tottenham are linked with all sorts of wingers. This guy's English, this guy has the relationship with the club, the 2 clubs have the relationship, and the agency has the relationship. So I'm not sure if there's anything more to it than that, but look, I've run my eye over him and the small sample size that there is. I'll say he's an interesting player, and I think that Tottenham fans are going to have to increasingly get on board with this idea of signing young players that may or may not be ready right now, and hope that they're good ones for the future, because that seems to be the way we're moving. And obviously I think it was Dan Kilpatrick or Charlie Eccleshare, I forget which one, who this week said that there isn't that much money available in January which some people took as like oh, that's just Daniel Levy smoke screens. He doesn't want people to think that we're spending that Harry Kane money. But actually, I've been saying it on this channel for a while. If you heard in the fan forum the way that they put up on the screen the average spend over the last 6 years since we moved into the new stadium, and then factor in the amount of money we spend of our revenue as a ratio, as a percentage on our salaries, add that to the net spend of our transfer budgets and figure out that we're already knocking on the door of around 80% of our revenue, which next season would be the limit for FFP anyway, then I think there is a rationale, as I've been saying, to suggest that there really isn't going to be hundreds of millions of pounds available in January, and maybe 60, 70 million is the most that we could expect. And consequently, when you probably need to find 3 players, a winger, a centre-back and a striker, before you even worry about trying to replace a Pierre Højbjerg if he was to leave, or other players, then I think you have to be a little bit wily, a little bit smart with how you go about it. And I genuinely do believe that Tottenham's new approach to transfer activity is to focus on youth, because it's the only way you can get ahead of the inflation in the transfer market that's being caused by places like Saudi Arabia, or the invocation of things like Clear Lake Capital at Chelsea that seems to be throwing money at a long-term project and front-loading the project wildly out of balance. And I just don't think Daniel Levy's the sort of guy that's going to do that. So he's going to pivot and go down a pathway of trying to find relatively good value for money youth players and hope that they're going to be ready sooner rather than later. Another young player that Tottenham are linked with, guys, that I've mentioned 3 or 4 times on this channel, is Santiago Gimenez. And once again, Fabrizio Romano came out over the weekend and said on his podcast, he's basically kind of trying to ram home the story, saying, guys, I don't think you understand how interested Tottenham are in Santiago Gimenez. They send scouts out to every single Feyenoord game, and I've seen Gimenez score, I think it's 15 goals in 17 games or something this season for Feyenoord, which is right up there with the best in Europe. And he's 22 years old and a player that, I don't need to go through the rationale for why I like him anymore. For me, I think the guy has got everything. He reminds me so much of Harry Kane. He can come deep, pick the ball up, put it into the corners, which obviously is something that we lacked or missed when we didn't have James Maddison. And without James Maddison's creative flair, then Sonny seems to be a little bit kind of irrelevant, because he needs someone to play the ball through, and he can sit on the shoulder. Doesn't really work without Maddison. And so Santiago Gimenez can be the kind of Harry Kane to Sonny. And I've asked the question before about whether or not you can play, if you do bring in a number 9 of top quality, what does that mean for Sonny? Do you shoehorn him back out to the left? And actually, on kind of further evidence now, having seen what we saw against Wolves, I think that there's absolutely room for both to be squeezed in a slightly different tweaked version of itself, sort of similar to how we would have played the front 2 last season with Harry Kane and Sonny. Interesting that the story is getting stronger from Fabrizio Romano in that vein, and according to reports, 39-40 million is all that's required. There's obviously the risk that this guy's only done it so far really in the Dutch league, and we've seen a never-ending plethora of examples of Dutch strikers that score goals for fun over there and then don't quite do it in the Premier League. But with this particular guy, I think it's worth the punt. I really do like him. I think he's got all of the kind of credentials to be a really, really, really top-class player, and I'd love to see him come in. And I think it's nice to know that Tottenham are sending scouts out there every single game, hopefully having conversations with the player, through intermediaries or the agency or the club, to kind of make sure that if there is a chance to get something done in January, then Tottenham's interest shouldn't be overlooked, and that hopefully will be part of that conversation. Although, of course, we won't be the only club that's looking at him. Chelsea are looking at him alongside players like Ivan Toney, Ollie Watkins, Dusan Vlahovic. Arsenal will have to pick up one of those as well. So it's not going to be easy, but I'm very excited by the prospect of spending 40 million, 45 million, whatever it's going to cost on someone like Santiago Gimenez. What I would also say, guys, is that if you look around the news right now, you'll find that Arsenal aren't able to sign an Ivan Toney without liquidating some of their players that are surplus to requirements, which is not going to be easy in the secondary market given the state of finances around Europe, or they get more loans injected into their club from their owners. Chelsea are knocking on the door of FFP. Manchester United are very much knocking on the door of FFP, up against the door to be honest, as are Newcastle. Teams that are around us that are looking potentially to add some their striker options are all very much approaching the FFP threshold, and Tottenham aren't. So maybe on this scenario, Daniel Levy needs to not only roll the dice with a little bit of tolerance for risk by going youth, but also paying up for a young player that's done it. But also you have to take this opportunity now, because other clubs will have to move money around or find new mechanisms to be able to even make that transfer happen. And Tottenham, to many people's frustration, haven't spent enough in the past, and so consequently they're not up against the FFP threshold like other clubs are. So there's an opportunity there if Tottenham want to take it. And look, if Tottenham were to go and get Santiago Gimenez and this fella from Juve, Illing Jr., or someone from Club Bruges, Antonio Nusa, Andreas Skov Olsen, young players that have got lots of potential, high ceilings, high possible, asset value appreciation, then that still doesn't solve the main criteria, which is what do we do at the back? And as I said before, if you've only got 70 million maybe to spend, which is what is touted to be, then Tottenham are going to have to be a little bit wily in that regard. Now, this morning and yesterday we saw that Pochettino is not particularly interested in keeping Trevor Chalobah as part of his plans, so there's an option there. I'm not particularly sold. I don't feel like I've seen enough of Chalobah to know whether or not I think he's the perfect fill-in. I know people like Henry absolutely love Chalobah. I mean, I'll let you guys make your own mind up. I haven't really done enough due diligence on him to have a strong opinion on whether I think this guy is the right guy or not. What I would say is obviously the two names that are still linked very heavily are Lloyd Kelly. I think Tottenham, I didn't know this at the time, but Tottenham, I read yesterday, had a £20 million bid rejected on transfer deadline day for Lloyd Kelly, as did Liverpool. So Liverpool and Tottenham may be going to be going back in. Liverpool might be front runners because they're obviously looking for support in the left back role given Robertson's injury problems, but there's that story that could unfold. And of course there is still the lingering uncertainty around Tosin Adarabioyo, who is also out of contract in the summer, but both Fulham and Bournemouth have suggested and made it quite clear that they're not going to just be ramrodded or steamrolled over onto a cheap deal just to help out other clubs when they don't necessarily feel like they need to, and they feel like they can still convince their players to stay for the last 6 months and see out their contract, or maybe even sign a new one, which will be interesting. What I would also say, guys, is there's more news out today that Eric Dyer is wanted by Bayern Munich. I mean, I'm not even sure if I want to give this one the credibility that the journalist wants, but apparently Bayern Munich are very interested in Eric Dyer because of his utility. He can play as a defensive midfielder and a centre-back, and the style of play that they play, apparently, even though I don't necessarily see how this makes sense, but according to the report, suits Eric Dyer's version of football or his competencies more than Tottenham do. And Daniel Levy is hopeful to get some sort of fee for Eric Dyer. Bayern Munich are looking at him and thinking that they can get him for a nominal fee because of his contract situation, but Eric Dyer himself still wants to run the contract down so he can get paid a nice juicy contract when he's a free agent in the summer. So that's an interesting story, which we'll see. But again, if he decides that he doesn't want to go and refuses to talk to anybody, then does that once again preclude Daniel Levy from tearing up the contract this January and making room in the squad for the new centre-back that we clearly and 100% definitely need? There's a whole bunch of other centre-backs that we're being linked with, guys, but I won't be able to get through all of those on this video. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring out like a video this week that will be the top centre-back targets for Tottenham in January, and we'll go through each of them in detail, including Trevor Chalobah as well. Another story that came out today was that Real Madrid have identified Christian Romero as their future centre-back. I think he fits perfectly into what they're trying to do. And this is an interesting one. According to reports, £70 million would be enough to prize him away from Tottenham. And I find the story quite interesting. I had a conversation with Henry the other day around whether or not Tottenham, if Tottenham could, would you do a straight swap, Tapsoba for Romero? Because of Romero's, brilliance when he's on, but obviously his vulnerability is his lunacy, that kind of crazy gene that he has. And is that just too much of an ongoing issue to constantly have the disruption to the first team from unnecessary moments? I don't think Romero will be going anywhere, but the story is there. So I thought I'd bring it to your attention. Let me know your thoughts on it. And I think that's about it, guys. I think that's about it. Lots of stories comings in and comings out. There's some more links to players in Italy, a Torino centre-back as well. But like I say, I'm going to do a more deeper dive into the centre-back situations. Let me know your thoughts. Would you be happy if Tottenham signed a winger, a striker and a centre-back in January? Is that your priority? Or do you see more support at left-back being an issue with Udoghi's injury? Oh, that's another piece of news as well. Udoghi got removed from the Italian squad. International break team, nursing an injury. Some people are saying he'll be back for the Aston Villa game, but others are saying he's out for 4 weeks. It never rains, but it pours, guys. But yeah, that's about your transfer news, views and clues update today. And for me, I'd love it if we could get Santiago Gimenez. I would love it if we could get a top quality centre back, but I don't know if we're being linked with anyone that's too big. I still think that Gleison Bremer would be a wonderful bit of business. If we could get Bremer, if they want to sign that Illing Jr. and Santiago Gimenez, I would take that all day long as a January bit of business. I really would. All three of those would fit into the system, would add support, add depth, and would have me chomping at the bit to get through into the second half of the season. Let me know your thoughts though, guys. Like, subscribe and comment, and as always, bye bye.